Hello, on Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest returned to City Ground after a successful stint on the road when they host Fulham on Saturday. Both teams can point to good results against each other in recent seasons, so how will this one pan out? Joining me to discuss all that and more is Russ Goldman from the Cottage Talk podcast. Russ, really good to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Matt. I look forward to talking to you about this match.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. People who aren't familiar with you can tell just from that one sentence that you are in America. You're an American Fulham fan. Lots of
Sure.
Americans involved in podcasts. Two on our podcast in Ruby and Chief. Non-hosting I can think of. So, where are you in the States? Out of curiosity, and how come you're a Fulham fan?
So I'm about 15 minutes away from Gillette Stadium, which is outside of Boston. It's where the New England Patriots and the New England Revolution play. So I'm outside of Boston, and between Boston and Providence, Rhode Island. So I'm on the East Coast, and I became a Fulham supporter going back to 2007, and it's not a unique story for many American Fulham supporters. Is that Clint Dempsey played for the New England Revolution. I was looking for a club to follow. I followed him to Fulham, and I actually followed him during the Great Escape season where Fulham stayed up at the very end to basically avoid relegation. And I was hooked because of that season. And that really just it took off from there. Then the next season, they have a really excellent season under Roy Hodgson. And then right after that, you have the Europa League. So I went from basically escaping relegation to being in a Europa League final within a couple seasons, and it really took. It really took. It honestly, the fandom really took after that Great Escape season. But I have been doing this podcast, Cottage Talk, for 13 years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And I watch and listen to Fulham information, Fulham stuff 24/7, my friend. I'm all in.
Excellent, excellent. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the game. Certainly, I mean, if we
Sure.
start with this season in general, you're coming off the back of a really solid campaign. It feels like Marco Silva knows exactly what he's doing. What have you made of this season so far, and what are your kind of aspirations after 38 games? What are you hoping for?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm expecting better than they had 2 seasons ago, which was 10th. My expectations are extremely high. They are fighting for Europe, and I'll explain why. It's all been leading up bits and pieces to where Fulham are now. 2 seasons ago, they get back to the Premier League and they make a mark. Then Mitro leaves and they take a step back. This season, Paulinho leaves, and you think that they would take another step back, but they have not. They've actually, in my opinion, taken a step forward because they've become closer as a team and in the really into the vision of what Silva wants to do. He doesn't want it to be about one player. He wants it to be about his concept, his system being about the team. If there is a position where I think he builds his team around, it would be the number 10, which is the role that Emil Smith Rowe is playing. And I don't think it's an accident that he was the one player that he desperately wanted to get, and he got him. And now he's built the team around him. So for me, even though we've lost two players that you would think are just not replaceable, they've found a different way to basically push forward. And I knew after watching them in preseason that things were different. And it's going to sound strange because it really starts with a preseason friendly against Benfica. And you're going to say, well, what did you see there that led you to what you're seeing now? Is that I really saw a team that was so far ahead from where they were 2 seasons ago when they played Benfica. They were outclassed. This time, Fulham outclassed Benfica. And I'm thinking there's something going on here. And it was about the players coming together as a team and Emil Smith Rowe being in that role and the other players that Fulham have added as well. So I had a feeling back then that it was going to look a little bit different. And then we had the Manchester United match. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was disappointed that they got nothing from it because I could see the progression. I thought they might even beat Manchester United. So I'm actually a little bit disappointed by their points total because they should actually have 4 more points. That just tells you how well I feel that they've been playing. And I'm excited for the rest of the season. I'm excited for this match. I think it's two teams that are evenly matched, and it should be fun.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because we feel we've started really well. You know, one more point than you, but feel like we could have more points as well. So, like I say, it's going to be a really good game. Just touching on some of the transfer business that you mentioned. Obviously, Smith Rowe grabbed the headlines, but it feels like from the outside looking in, he did some really sensible business, bringing Anderson back to the club.
Yes.
Reece Nelson. I don't know if you've replaced Mitrovic directly, but you've got Jimenez and Muniz battling. I don't know if that's a weak point or not. Muniz was a weak point in my FPL team, but talk to us about the squad in general and the business done.
So what's interesting is that, like I mentioned, it's pretty well known that the number one target this summer was Emile Smith-Rowe. So he brings him in. But before he did that, he brought back a former Fulham player that really hasn't featured much. It's still coming back to fitness, is Ryan Sessegnon. So he added Ryan Sessegnon, which I think was a good positive move. Then they signed a player that really we didn't know that much about from Villarreal called Jorge Cuenca, who is really going to be a backup center back, but he could actually start as well. He has been quality for what we have seen. Then, of course, we're talking about Anderson. And I think Anderson and Emile Smith-Rowe are the two game changers for Fulham. Emile Smith-Rowe will make Fulham push forward and basically really be more offensive, whereas you got Anderson coming back to the team. And a weak point for me was having a dominant center back, a ball-carrying center back. They move away from Tosin. Tosin goes to Chelsea, and I think they upgrade by bringing Anderson back because one of the things, Matt, that is crucial to the way that Silva wants to play is that he wants to play out from the back. He wants to play the ball out from the back. Well, now he has a right center back that can just basically, with his diagonals, just move the play very quickly, and he's very accurate. He's not quite, your Liverpool center back, but he is not that far off. And I think with a combination of those two players, it's changed for him. But I will say the one disappointing business that they did not do was to bring in a striker. They have not replaced Mitrovic. Still have not replaced Mitrovic. So that's been something that we've talked a great deal about, but it feels like to me that I'm not saying that Silva's happy with it, but I think he is content with the strikers he has. And right now he's going with Raul Jimenez, and it's working out pretty good. But I think one of the reasons why it's not as big of a deal as many might think is because the team is not being built around Mitrovic anymore. It's being built around Smith-Rowe, if that makes any sense. And then I also want to mention they brought in Sander Berge as well. Now, what's interesting about him, he can't even start right now because we have Sasa Lukic playing really that Paulinho role. And that was really a situation that I was really concerned about. All Fulham supporters were concerned about, well, how are they going to replace Paulinho? And they actually, I wouldn't say that they replaced him. They're just doing it in a different way. You got a player that has stepped up. He is not Paulinho. He's more of a passer than Paulinho was. He's not really a quote-unquote defensive midfielder, but he's doing the job, and he's doing it well. And then Sander Berge at some point is going to step in as either your number 6 or number 8. So I'm very happy with the business. I was a little bit disappointed with the whole Jay Stansfield thing because I wanted them to bring in someone to replace him, a striker. So, but beyond that, I would give it a 7.5 on a scale of 1 to 10.
It's really interesting that we're hearing you talk about your transfer window because a lot of our fans would say we probably needed a striker as well, even though Chris Wood's done really well. We got a ball-playing defender in Murillo, but we brought in Milenkovic to be the nuts and bolts defender. We built our team around a number 10.
That's right.
We've got quick, pacey wingers like you've got Traore, we've got Elanga. So feels to me like this is going to be a really tight, interesting matchup. How are you feeling about this game specifically?
I think you nailed it. In fact, I just did my preview show, and we're talking about teams that almost mirror each other. And that's what's fascinating about this because they want to play the same way. So I look at it this way, Matt. And like I said, in my preview show, we were talking about keys to victory. And I said, the number one key for me and for both teams, who can counter the best? Who can counter the best and who can stop the other from countering? That's the way I was looking at it. Who can stop the other from taking advantage of the opponent? Who can do it the best and who can take advantage on the counter? So to me, it's all about taking advantage of your opponent will win this match. And I think you're going to have a winner. I don't think you're going to have a draw here.
No, well, one of the interesting things is, even though we're so evenly matched, even though we play the same way, the games between us, they've not recently been close. Like, we beat you handsomely at the City Ground. You destroyed us at Craven Cottage and effectively ended Steve Cooper. And then the previous season, previous season you beat us from we had these awful 3-2 defeats from 2-0 up. That was one of them. And then our promotion season, we went to Craven Cottage and got a really nice win there through Zinkernagel, scoring the ugliest goal of the season. So there are very rarely draws between us. Is it a bit surprising to you that these games they are sometimes quite one-sided, even though they're two evenly matched teams?
It's interesting, and what's fascinating about this one, like you said, I actually don't think this is going to be as high scoring as others are predicting. I went on another podcast, and they're predicting a score, I don't know, like 3-2 or 4-3 or something like that. I don't see it that way, because when you look at the foundation of both sides right now, defensively pretty sound. Now, I've been reading and listening to a lot of talk about your goalkeeper situation. So maybe that's a situation that Fulham have the advantage on. But the center back pairing for both sides looks solid. The fullbacks look solid. So I don't see this as a match that's going to be 4-3. I'm looking at more of a 2-1 kind of match.
Could you just run us through your predicted 11, and I'll ask you about a couple of individuals if you don't mind?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you my predicted 11 that I think Marco's going to go with. I might go a little bit different, but this is what I think he's going to do. It's going to be Leno. It'll be Tete and Robinson as your fullbacks. It'll be Bassi and Anderson as your center backs. In the middle, I truly believe it will be Lukic, Pereira, Smith Rowe, Iwobi on the left, Traore on the right, and it'll be Jimenez up front. I truly believe that's what Marco's going to go with. My only feeling is that at some point I would like to see Reece Nelson start and Traore come off the bench, but you don't do that right now with Traore playing so well. But eventually I think you'll see that kind of switch. That would be the only thing that I would change.
I'll just ask you about a couple of individuals then, going from back to front. I mean, I love so many of your players, but there are times when I watch you and Bassi, he kind of looks like he's got an error in him, to say the least. Is he a weak point, or is that unfair?
I think it's a little bit unfair, and I'll explain why. I would agree with you, but I think the issue has to do with the fact that he now has Anderson as his partner, has put less on his plate. I think he was trying to take the leadership role, Matt, and now it's on Anderson, so he can play more freely than he did before. Because when the ball's playing out from the back, it is more to do with Innocent. With Diop, it was more to do with Bassi, and I think teams took advantage of him. So could that be a weak point? Yes, but overall, Calvin Bassi, over the course of his time at Fulham, has been a success. Early in this season, it wasn't so until Anderson came back into the team.
Anthony Robinson, who is, I'm sure he's a countryman of yours. He plays for America. I don't know if he's born in America. I don't think he was, but one of the most underrated fullbacks in the league. It feels like he's very consistent to me whenever I see him.
Okay, so what's interesting about Anthony Robinson, Jedi, is that I've gone after him for the past, 2 to 3 years. And every time I've criticized him, he's played well. So I don't have anything to do with that, but I will just tell you that he's worked on his weaknesses, and his crossing was a huge weakness of his game. He's definitely worked on that. He's improved that a great deal. He is turned into a two-way player, meaning that he does get back, but he is more deadly going forward. But I do think if there was a place where Nottingham Forest could take advantage of, it would be defensively with Robinson if he does not get back. That to me is a place, if I was looking at from a Forest perspective, I would be looking at trying to attack Anthony Robinson.
What about Pereira? Because he spent the last 2 years playing as the 10, and now
Yeah.
Smith Rowe's come in and done it. How's
Oh,
Pereira adapted to a deeper role?
can I just tell you, I can't tell you how many shows I've done about Pereira and how basically split it is amongst the supporters. I would say it's 50-50 on him. You either love him or you hate him. And I mean, there's a good amount that do not like him. Every team has a player that has that streak in him, and ours is definitely Pereira. And right now, honestly, his better role is the number 10, Matt. But the issue is you're not going to take Smith Rowe off that. Smith Rowe is going to be Fulham's best player. They're building the team around him. So that leaves the situation with Pereira. And Pereira has played the number 8 role, but defensively, he's not the greatest as a number 8, basically playing side by side with Lukic. He can be taken advantage of. We saw that against Ipswich Town. We definitely saw that. He's just not defensively as sound as a player you'd want at that position. But moving forward, he is doing the job, but I have this love and hate thing with him as well, because his set pieces, he's the guy that takes all the set pieces. His first season, they were great. Since then, they haven't been the greatest. And he doesn't score him enough goals. So the biggest criticism that fans have had on him is that as a number 10, he barely scored goals. Now we have Smith Rowe scoring goals from that position. So the thing is that Silva loves him. He's going to play him. But I'm telling you right now, there is a group of supporters that would be fine if he was benched. I'm telling you that right now, and have Sander Berge play that role instead.
Last one I was going to ask you about is Traore. Our manager Nuno got so much out of him when he was at Wolves. I think he's kind of blown hot and cold since then. It sounds like he's blowing hot at the moment then.
He is. And what's interesting about him, and again, what's great about the managers we're talking about, players get better under Nuno. Players get better under Silva. They both have that quality. And I got to tell you, he is getting the most out of him. And last season, he was injured a lot, Matt. So he wasn't at full fitness, and he did not have a preseason. Marco just talked about that today on his presser, that this is a big difference between Traore last season to this season. The issue I have with Traore is he's not the greatest finisher. And according to Marco, he feels that he's really worked on that part of his game. But I think at some point, I think he might be more valuable to Fulham in 30 minutes than 70 to 90 minutes, because I think him coming off the bench with a team that is tired, I think would do damage, would do more damage. But right now, he's doing a great job. I have to hand it to him. He's assisting a great deal. He's scored a goal. And whenever the ball is at his feet, even myself, I get, it's like, something's going to happen, man. So he has that excitement. Can he put it together? I think there's a reason why he's at Fulham and not at Barcelona anymore. He's missing that part of his game. But I will tell you that right now, Marco Silva's getting the most out of him.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were linked with Reece Nelson tentatively at the start of the summer, and he was like one we were really keen on, because him and Smith Rowe we would have liked, but Smith Rowe would have had to play in a different role, because we've got Gibbs White, who we're building our team around. But yeah, they've done some really good business, I would say, certainly. Just before I get Russ's thoughts on Forest and any players that he might be worried about, just a final plug for the gig at the Nav straight after the game, Steve McGill's 90s mixtape, straight after at the Trent Navigation, free entry. And obviously you can get your post-match food there, pizza, the barbecue, 2 outdoor bars, 2 big screens now, and they do take cash, which they don't do anywhere in London when I last went there. If you're a Fulham fan coming up, what do you make of? I don't know how much you've seen of Forest in the last year, this season, particularly because we're playing well. But what do you make of Forest from what you have seen of them?
I've been impressed of what I've seen, and I watched the last match. And what's interesting about that match with Brighton is that even though Brighton had the upper hand early, I'm just looking at a team that reminds me of Fulham, that when they get their opportunity, they're going to take advantage of it. Now, it was a penalty, and it was a deserved penalty, but it was beyond that. Even with everything going on, you still get the equalizer, and you get a point out of a very difficult place to play. And when I look at them, we've already talked about, you've already mentioned it. You're dangerous on the wings. Now, I know Morgan Gibbs-White is not playing, and that is a miss, but you have players that can play that position. You absolutely do. And I rate Chris Wood similar to the situation that we have with Jimenez and Rodrigo Muniz. The team is not built around the striker. He's just the striker. The team is built around the number 10. And barring this match, it'll be about Morgan Gibbs-White. And like we said, defensively, 2 solid center backs. Where you might be questionable is that goalkeeper right now. So that's where I'm looking at if I'm Fulham, because they will get a lot of balls in the box. And I would be challenging that goalkeeper left and right.
I did see a stat. I think it was Pete mentioned it on our preview show this morning, that he thought Fulham had either the most or the second most crosses into the box.
Yeah.
Is that a big tactic or the big tactic then to feed the ball into the box for the striker and the number 10 breaking in?
I would say that's really how Fulham play, Matt. That's what they want to do. They want to get the ball wide and then get it to Smith Rowe, get it to Jimenez or it's Muniz. They basically want to crash that box. And what's interesting is that I'm not used to that my entire Fulham life. I'm used to maybe one player in the box. What's fun is to see 4 or 5 players in the box and creating havoc. And that's what they're doing right now. That's what's the brand of football that I'm watching is just, if I go all the way back to Hodgson, it's so funny to think of the Hodgson days compared to now. This is so different. Jokanovic's strategy was a little similar, but it was more possession. And Parker ball was just terrible stuff, man. Can I just tell you, it's still the worst football I've ever watched. I'm going to tell you right now. And I know they're doing well at Burnley, but I feel bad for those Burnley supporters because Parker ball's just terrible. It's terrible. I don't care if he gets you promoted. I think it's terrible to watch each and every week. But then you go from that to what Silva's doing, and it's just a joy to watch. And I think Fulham again are going to be in every match this season, and that includes Man City coming up next. Is that what's interesting about this? And I think Nuno probably feels the same way. I don't think Nuno wants to go into a match thinking, I can compete with these guys. He's going in thinking, I can beat these guys. You beat Liverpool. Fulham are going to do the same thing when they play Man City. And I think that's also why they recruited the way that they recruited this summer. They don't want to just play with them. They want to beat them. So I think we're kind of on a similar path here.
It's funny. I laughed at the Scott Parker comment because we had a Bournemouth fan on earlier, and
did he tell you the same thing?
Yeah, basically, yeah. He had no love for Scott Parker at all. Much more for Gary O'Neill and Iraola, their manager now. But a consistent theme, that made me laugh. Any other Forest players that you like the look of that would worry you when you see the lineups on Saturday?
Well, I would put Callum Hudson-Odoi right up there. It's funny because I was listening to a podcast that was calling him, and I guess it was a little tongue-in-cheek, a one-trick pony, because I guess that's a compliment with him, but he's not a one-trick pony. I'll give you a one-trick pony. It's a player by the name of Manor Solomon that played for Fulham. He's now playing for Leeds United. That's a one-trick pony because if you just force him to go out wide, he couldn't do it. Callum Hudson-Odoi can do more than just cut in. So he's a dangerous player. He is a player that concerns me. Alanga concerns me as well. Like I mentioned, I'm always concerned about Chris Wood. There are several players that concern me. I'm not going to lie, but I think that it's an even matchup. Because I think that there are several players that can hurt Nottingham Forest. That's what's interesting about this match. I just see it so evenly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we'll leave it there. It was really good to get Russ's thoughts. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favor and hit like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel. You can become a channel member, obviously, and leave us a lovely review on iTunes. I'm really looking forward to this game, and I think no matter what the result, I think we're two teams that are going to have good seasons. I said this last week's the Brighton fan as, but if we finish one place below Fulham, then we probably had a good season. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, certainly. Where can people find more of you, Russ, if they want to check out some Fulham content? What's your podcast called?
Sure. My Podcast is called Cottage Talk. You can follow that on X. It's also on any podcast app that you have out there. I also just recently launched a Cottage Talk Patreon page, so I am doing some exclusive podcasting on that Patreon page, and you can also follow me on the Twitter account for Cottage Talk, simply Cottage Talk, or Russ_Goldman is my other account.
Excellent. It's been a great pleasure to have you on, and I wish you guys well for the rest of the season. Hopefully, we'll have you on for the return fixture. I don't know when that is, but it'd be good to catch up with you again. Right. Have a good day, everyone. Post-match show tomorrow, 8 o'clock. So I'm going to the game, so it's a bit later, but hopefully we'll see you then. And if not, we shall see you soon.